Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have our keynote speaker here this afternoon, and it's my pleasure to be able to introduce her. I'm Nakima Levy-Pounds, and I am a law professor here at St. Thomas. I direct the Community Justice Project, which is a civil rights legal clinic. And in my work in the CJP, one of the things that we look at has to do with some of the disparities within the criminal justice system. And I recall when I arrived here back in 2003, I was doing research on the war on drugs and the impacts on communities of color. And one of the names that came out in the research was Judge Pamela Alexander. And when I found out that she was right here in Minnesota, I was amazed because back in the 90s, she took, actually the mid to late 80s, she took a very strong stance against the crack versus powder cocaine sentencing disparity right here in Minnesota, and she struck it down. And it's taken, almost 3 decades for her to be vindicated from that courageous decision as a judge. And I said, I want to get to know this woman who used the law as a tool to advance the cause of social justice. So for those who don't know her, we'll have a chance to hear from her. You have bios printed on your table about Judge Alexander, and I'm going to read a brief portion of one of her bios. Judge Pam Alexander grew up in South Minneapolis. She graduated from the University of Minnesota Law School. She began her legal career as a criminal defense attorney with the Legal Rights Center, and then moved to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office as a prosecutor in the criminal division. From 1983 to 2008, she served first as a municipal judge and then as a district judge for Hennepin County. She presided over the juvenile division and served as assistant chief judge for the court as a whole. She's been on many community boards and committees, including the Minneapolis Foundation Board of Trustees, the Children's Defense Fund, and the Juvenile Judges Leadership Council. She's been awarded numerous community service awards, which, again, many of which are printed on your program, but I'll just name a couple of them. The NAACP Profiles Encourage Award is one, as well as the Esther V. Crosby Girl Scout Award. She's taught as an adjunct professor at William Mitchell School of Law, as well as the University of St. Thomas Law School, where she received the Dean's Award for outstanding teaching. From 2008 to 2013, she served as the president of the Council on Crime and Justice. Judge Alexander was reappointed to the bench by Governor Mark Dayton in January of 2013. As I mentioned before, she is someone who I sought out, I wanted to get to know because of the impact that she has on the community in terms of using the law as a tool to advance the cause of social justice, really caring about what's happening in the local community, and being willing to take a stand for justice. The fact that she teaches in 2 of our 4 law schools is a testament to her connection to students, as well as the wisdom that she brings from her time on the bench and as the president of the Council on Crime and Justice. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Judge Pamela Alexander.
Thank you so much for that gracious introduction, and I am so happy to welcome all of you to Minnesota. You bought the sun. We haven't had it for the last few weeks, so I'm glad that you're here. And I'm also thrilled to be speaking to you this afternoon. One of our greatest assets are the students that we have the privilege to teach. I may be very passionate about social justice, but I'm also very passionate about students and what we do with young minds and how we shape them. I am an adjunct professor here at St. Thomas, and I teaching in one of the experiential learning courses, the judicial externship course here at St. Thomas. And it's really a pleasure for me to teach such young, energetic students and to mold and shape them as they will indeed impact the practice of law in the legal profession. But more importantly, they're going to impact what happens in the world. As I was preparing for my remarks today, I was a little scared because, you all are law professors and you're like really smart and you spend a lot of time reading stuff. Judges don't have time to read a whole lot because, we're in court all the time and we're trying to, once in a while we'll read an article or once in a while they'll send us something and say, this might be worth you looking at, Judge. And we try to, do some reading, but I know that you all are like serious about that. So you read all the time. So I said, I'm a little intimidated by this audience because I know how smart y'all are. Now, I really thought I would come in here and see, people with like really huge heads, because that's what you always think about when people have lots of brain power. But here you are, and you're just kind of normal folks. But I know that you're real well-read normal folks. And so that does give me some pause sometime. But when I was researching, I came across a number of articles that talked about whether a law school education was worth the price. With the economy, the push to reduce legal costs, the increased use of technology, and an industry in transition, many people think that a law degree isn't worth it. But I'm here to tell you that I really think it is. But what we need to do is refocus what our emphasis is and broaden our outlook. When I first went to law school, which was, ancient time ago, one of the things that kind of was interesting to me was that the big emphasis was on get this law degree, pass the bar, and go work in a large law firm. I had no intentions of doing any of that. So I was like, okay, this is the wrong emphasis for me, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But lawyers actually are in a number of diverse positions in our marketplace overall. They're CEOs, they're CFOs, they're executive directors of nonprofits, they're foundation heads, and of course, the President of the United States also has a law degree. So students can aspire to be just about anything that they want to be, and we owe it to them to give them entry into the variety of markets that are really open to them once they have the legal education as an asset. We also need to help our students to see that we're actually in a helping profession, that people need our help in many areas and walks of life. I'm a huge proponent of experiential learning, of clinics, interns and externships, in anywhere that we can expose students to the practical side of the law. I'm also a big proponent of letting students know that they have the ability to change the world. That's one of our charges. I think law professors forget that sometimes. Students do have the ability to change the world through their legal training, and we can move them through the quagmire of issues and find practical legal solutions to just about every problem that faces us. Let me give you an example of some work a young lawyer did for me when I was at the Council on Crime and Justice before I went back on the bench. This young lawyer, her name is Emily Baxter, she actually graduated from this institution and she's currently the Advocacy and Public Policy Director at the Council. While she was working for me, she did apply and receive a fellowship to conduct a project on collateral consequences of a criminal conviction and how that actually impacted an individual. Because of her work, the American Bar Association actually enlisted her to help put together the database that shows what happens in each state if you have a criminal conviction. She helped put together that database, but she wanted to go beyond that and really show pictorially what happens to people who have criminal convictions. So she worked on a project that was called We Are All Criminals. She put together, through pictures, a display of individuals who committed offenses and were never charged. And she put up all their pictures to show what they're doing now and what would have happened to them if, in fact, they had that criminal conviction had stayed with them. But they were never charged, and so they were able to go on and reach great heights within the community. But had they been charged, there were certain things that would happen to them today that did not happen to them years ago. This display is a powerful, it sends a very powerful message to those that see it. And she is trying through her work to make policymakers understand that when they impose collateral consequences on individuals, they have to think about it in a much broader context. She is working to change the hearts and minds of people. That's exactly what we want law students to do. That's exactly what we want law students to do. We want them to be passionate about something and go out and try to figure out how to change the world and to help more than just themselves making a decent paycheck. I had another lawyer that worked for me, another young woman who was a AmeriCorps justice worker, and what she did was set up expungement clinics for former offenders so they could figure out how to clear their records so that the collateral consequences of a conviction would also not follow them through life. Along with Emily, she used University of Minnesota law students to help with this effort, teaching them how to work with clients and how to clear their records and to help them. The students got very practical legal experience and also did a service for the community. I tell you about these two young women, one, because I'm extremely proud of them, and secondly, because they took their legal education and used it to better the world for others. That is something that I think we sometimes forget our charge. Because our charge is actually not only to make lawyers, but to make lawyers who will make a difference. When they stand up and take that oath, and I was at the bar when they were swearing all the young people in the other day, they take the oath to uphold justice. Are we teaching them anything about that? Are we getting too bogged down in other things and forgetting really the overall mission we have as teachers, which is to mold these young minds to change the world? Lawyers are doing it all the time. We have that charge to young people. Let me tell you a little bit about my legal journey and how a clinical professor actually helped me reach my goals. I never took his clinic in law school, and I'm going to tell you what he did for me. But first, I'm going to let you know that I'm the youngest of 6 children, the first in my family to attend college and attend law school. I decided to be a lawyer when I was about 12 years old after I was a witness to the rape of my best friend and had to testify in court. I distinctly remembered the judge because he kind of looked like a TV judge. He had very gray hair, and he was very old, and he had really big feet, and he had wingtip shoes, but he had very kind eyes. And he was very, very nice to me during this process because, quite frankly, I was scared to death. They also paid me a witness fee of $15, which seemed like a ton of money in 1964, I want you to know, for a 12-year-old. And I thought that the lawyers and the process and the courtroom and the judge were absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know any lawyers. My dad's a bus driver. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I knew nothing about law or lawyers, and I'd never met one in my life until I went into that courtroom that day. I walked away from that experience, though, with a goal in mind to become an attorney. I didn't really know how I was going to make that happen, but that was my goal. While I was in college, then I met a lawyer by the name of Bob Oliphant, who ran the legal misdemeanor clinic at the University of Minnesota Law School. He had come to my college to talk to students about who were interested in going to law school, and I told him of my interest, but readily admitted that the only time I'd ever been in the courtroom was when I was 12, knew nothing about it, and I didn't even know a lawyer. He was the first lawyer I'd actually really talked to. So I said, how do I figure that out? So lo and behold, he said, well, come down to the clinic. We're at the courthouse, and just hang out with me. So I said, okay. So as an undergraduate student, I went to court with him, hung out with all these law students who at that time I thought were extreme rock stars. I said, wow, look at them. I thought they were the most wonderful thing on earth. I thought, if I can really do this, I think I can actually do this. Then I saw these students and how hard they were trying and the people that they were representing, and I thought, wow, maybe actually I could do this. Maybe I could get there. I applied to law school. Lo and behold, somebody actually let me in. And I ended up, that experience actually solidified my resolve to become an attorney and firmly set my mind to become a criminal defense lawyer. After I was accepted at the University of Minnesota Law School, I did not have an opportunity to work in Professor Oliphant's clinic. However, I did clerk at the Neighborhood Justice Center and the Legal Rights Center, and eventually became a staff attorney at the Legal Rights Center after I graduated from law school. Reaching that goal, setting those goals for myself, probably would never have been possible without Bob's willingness to take a struggling undergraduate student and help her hone her life dream. That's what you do. That's how you touch people. You probably have touched some students, you don't even know how you've done it. But you have, just by believing in them, by pushing them forward, by showing them something that they probably couldn't even dream of. I had a dream to be a lawyer, didn't know how I was going to make that happen, but this professor said, you can do it, come on down, I'm going to show you what it's really about, and then you tell me if you really still want to do it, and I still really did. Clinics provide, and I do also have to tell you that 2 of the law students that I worked with as an undergraduate through Professor Oliphant's clinic I became a law clerk to one of those lawyers, and then actually worked at the Legal Rights Center with one of those lawyers later, before I joined the Hennepin County Attorney's Office some years after that. And I will tell you, when I joined the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, I did become the head of the sexual assault unit. Obviously, I had some interest in that area. I was then the first African-American woman ever to be hired by that office, and I served as a liaison to the African-American community to make sure that people would come in and actually testify in court. When I entered law school, I had no intentions of ever working for a large law firm. I only wanted to serve my community in the criminal justice arena, and that's really what I did. I've now served as a judge in the county for now my 26th year. And over the time, I think there are 2 things that I've done that I take my greatest pride in. One is my law clerks, who I have an opportunity to work with extensively, and 2, my teaching at the law schools that I am fortunate enough to be adjunct professors at. I can tell you, in my 25 or 26 years on the bench, I was fortunate enough to hire 42 law clerks, and with an additional maybe 10 who work with me for credit through programs sponsored by their law schools. And I'm proud to say that each of my clerks, either paid or unpaid, have eventually ended up with jobs that they enjoy and have prospered. 2 of them are judges, 3 of them are managing partners at large law firms, 4 of them are prosecutors, 3 are corporate lawyers, 4 are solo practitioners, 5 of them work for the federal government, 2 work for insurance companies, some of them work in legal departments of hospitals, medical device companies, and school boards. 3 are politicians, 2 are law professors. They scare me still. And some left the practice of law altogether and work in various other fields, but they are all successful. A legal education, in my view, is a good investment, and the possibilities are endless with the right direction and outcome. The young people we work with can and will change the world. It's up to us to help them put their mark on fairness, equality, and justice, and to use their hard-earned skills for good. I tell many potential law students who worry about making money, I don't know a lawyer who starved to death, who's honed their skills and worked hard. I also tell them that we hold the doors open for justice and fairness in our society, and we should be prepared to walk the walk and talk the talk. It is up to us. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King did say that true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. Lawyers are the gatekeepers of justice. We are the teachers of those gatekeepers. And even though times are changing, we must change with those times. Our message in the new normal should be that we are still the gatekeepers of justice. We are the change agents. We've come a long way, and change has come, but we have not gone far enough. I often wonder what Dr. King would say if he were here today, and I think his message for us would be the same. America, you must be born again. We have a task. Let us go out with a divine dissatisfaction. Let us be dissatisfied until America no longer has a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and the comfort in the inner city of poverty and despair shall be crushed by the battering rams of the forces of justice. Let us be dissatisfied until those that live on the outskirts of hope are brought into the metropolis of daily security. Let us be dissatisfied until the slums are cast into the junk heaps of history and every family is living in a decent sanitary home. Let us be dissatisfied until the dark yesterdays of segregated schools, yes, we still have them in 2013, will be transformed into the bright tomorrows of quality integrated education. Let us be dissatisfied until integration is not seen as a problem, but as an opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity. Let us be dissatisfied until that day when the lion and the lamb shall lie down together and every person will sit under his own vine and none shall be afraid. America, you must be born again. Martin Luther King said that many years ago. It still applies today. The struggle for equality and justice continues. We have young minds that can change the world, and it is up to us to let them know that they can. I want to each of you to ask yourselves, what can you do to make a difference? Then act on it. It only takes one. Are you really that one? Change has come. Change will always be among us. But is the change actually in you? I want you to think about, when you're having your discussions this afternoon about where law school education is going, to remember it's not just about how we teach, but what we teach. And the overall picture of why the legal profession makes a difference. We make a difference because we can change things. The law changes things. The law is a living document that we live with every single solitary day. It changes every time every legislature meets around the world. It changes all the time, and it's up to us to interpret those changes and to help students and people understand what the law says. That's what lawyers do. I think students forget that we're in a helping profession. I want you to remind them of that. And because of their ability to help others, we have ability to change the world. I want to leave you with these words from a student who survived the Columbine massacre and wrote this on the anniversary of the shooting. The paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We spend more but have less. We buy more but enjoy it less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences but less time. We have more degrees but less sense, more knowledge and less judgment, more experts but more problems, more medicine but less wellness. We have multiplied our possessions but reduced our values. We talk too much, love too seldom, and hate too often. We've learned how to make a living but not a life. We've added years to life but not life to years. We've been all the way to the moon and back and have trouble crossing the street to meet the new neighbors. We've conquered outer space but not inner space. We've cleaned up the air but polluted the soul. We split the atom, but not our prejudice. We have higher income, but lower morals. We've become long on quantity, but short on quality. These are the times of tall men and short character, steep profits and shallow relationships. These are the times of world peace and domestic warfare, more leisure but less fun, more kinds of food but less nutrition. These are the days of 2 incomes but more divorce, of fancier houses but broken homes. It is a time where there is much in the showroom but nothing in the stockroom, a time where technology can bring this letter to you, and a time where you can choose either to make a difference or just hit delete. What will you do? Change has come, but is that change in you? And better still, can you put that change in the students that you teach? Thank you. Think about those things, and God bless.
Just so I don't forget, we do have a little gift for you, even before you answer questions.
Okay, thank you.
George has the microphone if anyone would like to ask questions for a few minutes.
Law professors without a question. You know what I tell my students? Only smart people ask questions. Gotcha. No.
Thank you. Let me express gratitude for your presentation. I enjoyed it very much. This is a fairly mundane question about your experience as a judge. When you're the fact finder in a particular case, how do you know if someone's telling the truth?
You don't. And so you actually look at all the facts as they're put together and you try to surmise what it is. Oftentimes, I had a couple, I was on a panel with a few judges about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking to new judges about listening to people and testimony and how to judge veracity. And every one of us said, we don't have a clue. People really lie well, so you just have to look at all the circumstances, try to flush it out, and hopefully you'll make a good decision based on the facts that as you find them. Generally, the facts are gonna fit together, and so in the long run, you have to take a big picture approach.
Judge, thank you for challenging.
She had a question.
Oh,
She had a question right here.
no, I have a question.
Oh, you have a question?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just
Okay,
prefacing my remarks with it.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
I thought you were
No,
going
no,
to
no.
me off. Okay.
No. No, thank you for challenging us and helping us put things into perspective. Earlier, you attended one of the sessions that was taught by Kate Cruz and Mary Jo Hunter. And you talked about how law students are leaving the law school environment unprepared for the workplace. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are some of the skills that you see that students are lacking that perhaps we can begin to address within these environments?
I think that students are coming into, especially the students that I have that have worked directly for me, they don't know how, especially when we're looking at procedural courses like Crim Pro, Civil Pro, all of those, they don't know how it actually applies in real life. So when they get there, we have to retrain them on that. So when they come in, I think they have the basic concept. And one thing that we are training students to do really well is research and write. They all do that really well. That's something that we generally don't have to retrain them on, but we do have to retrain them on how procedurally everything works, because they don't really have a clue when they come in unless they've either clerked in the court in some way or they've seen it in practice. And each courthouse has its own kind of culture in terms of how things are done, and it's not like it is in the book. For example, oftentimes people say, well, how come you're not having separate omnibus hearings where you're taking testimony? Well, we don't do that. We don't have time. You know, we have 30, 40 cases on a day, and I don't, and literally don't have the time to hold an omnibus hearing with testimony in each and every case. because you will add, I'm on the bench for 6 hours. There's 34 defendants. I don't have time if I'm going to speak to each of them and the lawyers on each side to give them that amount of time. And so, what they may learn theoretically doesn't actually play out in real practice. So they oftentimes have to be retrained every time they come in. I even had to retrain a number of attorneys that came to work for me when I was the president of the council on some of the areas that we wanted them to work in, just on the practical side of what we wanted them to do. They're not really prepared as they walk out of law school to be able to do those things. The lawyers who ran our expungement clinics, we had to teach them that particular area of the law and how it applies to each of the people before they went in to talk to them. And so, it's a process.
That was actually my question, was what were some of the skills that you saw in the clerks that you've hired that we could have done a better job at teaching in law school? So,
yeah, I really do think that law schools do the best job in writing and research, but the rest of it is really on-the-job training. Unless they come from a good clinic. And I do have to say that. I have to say that because some people do come from who have wonderful clinical experiences, and those young people really have a better chance of getting hired. So if you tell me that you came from a prosecutor clinic, a defense clinic, you've been in court, you were admitted under the senior practice rule, you have that experience, you will get hired quicker than the students who don't. The young people who take my judicial externship class and actually work with judges as law clerks, they get hired much quicker, especially by judges as permanent law clerks. They're getting to the point now where the judicial externship classes, we have one at the university, one at St. Thomas, and I think, does Hamlin have one too? Mitchell has one. Those students get hired as law clerks much quicker than students who don't have that experience. And oftentimes, because they already know the judges, they don't even interview. They'll just say, when are you graduating? Okay, let me know. And they hire them right away because, we hate to interview all those people. So that's what happens also.
Thank you, Judge. I wanted to ask you, we had at our faculty meeting someone talking to us about the millennials, the people who are younger, who have come from where their parents, for instance, will push for them to get into law school, or these are kids who are on soccer teams and everybody got a medal or trophy. And I'm wondering if you see that kind of, I hate to say it, but attitude of sort of entitlement, not only in law clerks, but if you see it at all in the defendants who appear before you?
No. The legal process still scares people to death most of the time. And so until you become very comfortable in it, it's an uncomfortable process. And we continue to make you uncomfortable in it because we don't want you to be. What I have noticed, though, is that there's a lot more disrespect toward the court and lawyers I'm seeing now that I did not see 10 years ago. So people are very quick to fire their lawyers. They're very quick to say, I can do this myself. I think they're very quick to say, I don't have a public defender, I have a public pretender. They're very quick to say those kinds of things, which is a bit problematic. I also find that, I call it the reality TV effect, where people just think they can come into courts and act anyway and do anything. And so I see a higher level of disrespect as it comes to the process. And so we're trying to do some things to address that. But I'm trying to do it without having a higher police presence, which, I think can backfire in some instances. So we're working on some things to kind of bring back the level of reverence for just the court process itself. But that's really what I'm saying. It's not necessarily lawyers, because I think the lawyers understand what the process is and and want to, keep it as formalized as we've had it. But I have seen that kind of, like, oh, I can just come in here and act anywhere I want. And we have to spend a lot of time controlling the courtroom more now so than I had to do 10 years ago. So that's really the difference I'm saying. In terms of law students feeling entitled, I don't think that they do. I think that they're very, many of the new law students, and we have about 6 of them on my floor, and I spent a lot of time talking to them, and they're just trying to, they're scared because they're thinking, after I leave you, I don't know what's going to happen to me, and I'm not sure I'm going to get a job, and I'm very concerned about being able to start a career, and that is kind of high on their minds, and they're very, very concerned about that because they think that the market has shrunk a lot, and there's not as much opportunity for them.
Judge, we heard last night from some young men that have had very difficult experiences in the juvenile justice system. Could you comment on what you think the biggest challenges are in that system and where the need for change is greatest?
Yeah. Do we have all, how long? No. The changes in the juvenile justice system is that we're actually making illegal things that were not illegal previously, and so that's a problem. So I think we're bringing in more kids than we need to. We're also keeping kids within the juvenile system longer than we need to. They should, even young people that are doing very low-level things, we're kind of overdoing, and we need to kind of step back and say, okay, maybe just a slap on the wrist is okay here. We don't have to go overboard. And oftentimes we do that because it's a treatment court. And so people think, oh, well, then I can just bring in everything on every kind of case that's there. That's not needed. So I think we're widening the net in a way that we don't need to. But I think the biggest problem in juvenile justice is the racial disparities right now, and the fact that there are very high levels of kids of color that are presenting with a number of issues, most of which are not of their own choosing. So I think we have to find better ways to handle those, and there are, we've had great success with a number of young people in a lot of different areas if they just get the right supports, and getting those supports in place can be expensive, and people don't want to spend money on it, especially when they look at the children. And so I think a big challenge for those of us involved in juvenile justice, and they won't let me go back to juvenile court to 2015, and I'm counting. I think a big issue is to try to stop looking at these kids as them and start looking at these kids as ours, and trying to figure out how to move these kids forward in a way that is positive. They can still be salvaged, and we need to quit trying to think we can throw them away. There's no throwaway children. That's my view.